Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait a couple more seconds before we kick things off for a few more people to roll in. Hope everyone has been having a great Wednesday so far. Okay, let's get things started. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for our webinar. We've got a great discussion ahead of us, and we're going to be delving into some of the technology roadblocks a small business faced and how they overcame them. So some stage setting items I want to cover before we begin. A quick introduction to myself. My name is Caroline Wood. I work at NetGain Technologies as Marketing Administrator, and I'm going to be moderating the webinar today. Questions are encouraged throughout the webinar. You can use the question option in GoToWebinar or the chat function to submit any comments or questions or even feedback during the webinar. And if you've got any questions about the content or topics that we cover in this webinar, maybe like after the fact, please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to meet with you or share some additional content and information about technology and how you might be able to better leverage it for your organization. And last, but certainly not least, we do have a recorded version of this presentation that's going to be sent to everyone who attends, and it's going to be made available on the NetGain website as well. And we'll be sending out an email sharing those details once the content is available, and that should be within the next couple of days or so. More information on that forthcoming. So let's get this webinar started. I'll begin with some general introductions to our speakers today. We've got a guest from Birch Tree Communities with us, as well as a fellow NetGainer who plays the role of account executive for Birch Tree. And let's go around the room. I will let them introduce themselves, their background, and a little bit about how they work together. So I'm going to give the floor to Blake Smith from Birch Tree first.
Thanks, Caroline. Welcome, everybody. My name is Blake Smith. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Birch Tree Communities. I'm responsible, for the financial stability of the organization, helping to prepare budgeting forecasts and look at forward-looking strategies. In addition to that, I'm in charge of the IT operations, which includes help desk, security, policy, and strategic direction. Prior to joining Birch Tree, I was the finance director at the Clinton Foundation in Little Rock. I spent 8 years at the foundation, which gave me a lot of experience in the non-for-profit sector. And prior to that, I was with Birch Communications as a finance liaison for their engineering arm of the organization, and that gave me experience and knowledge in the in telephony and IT. I've been a CPA since 2012. I've got 2 boys, and I'm a lovely wife who I've been married to for 13 years, and we're raising our family in Little Rock.
Thank you, Blake. Appreciate it. And on the NetGain side of this equation, we have Carl Crosby.
Well, thank you for that, Caroline, and thank you, Blake, also for your very detailed introduction. I probably will fail at doing such a good job of doing that, but Carl Crosby, Senior Account Executive. I have worked for NetGain for 18 years. My roles include working with clients such as Blake to help untangle this world of IT. I am his direct liaison to all things NetGain and connecting him with any questions he may have in terms of anything related to IT. As everyone knows, not all things are easy to understand. So given my experience in the industry, simply put, I am a interpreter of things in IT, and we certainly, leverage technology solutions to, that are financially justified, to help align with their business, to help run their business, and help clients focus on their core business operations and allow NetGain to focus on their IT. As far as personal things, married 10 years. I have 4 children They're all college aged. Let's not do the math on that because there's other stories. Yes, live in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Born and raised Arkansas guy. Woo pig. That's pretty much the size of it.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. So now that we've introduced the team, let's move on to the actual content of the webinar. So we are gathered here today to not only learn about some technology opportunities and challenges, we're also here to learn a little bit about what a technology partnership can look like between a small business and a managed service provider. We're going to have firsthand testimonials from both Blake and Carl regarding some of the IT obstacles and challenges they face together and what the short and even longer term outcomes have brought to Birch Tree as well as to NetGain. To set the stage, I think it's important to have a little bit of context about our stories together. So we'll begin with learning more about Birch Tree Communities as a business and what roles they play in their communities that they serve and how they support their clients. And then we're going to take a closer look at a major IT challenge they faced within the past couple of years and how they elected to partner with an MSP to resolve that challenge. We may also get some insights into other IT projects that Birch Tree and NetGain has worked together on, and we'll close the discussion with somewhat of like a forward glance into some future IT projects and plans for this healthcare group and how they're working with NetGain and working with Carl to kind of set their business up for longer term success with technology. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Blake to tell us about Birch Tree Communities and some of the history of the company. So Blake, who or what is Birch Tree Communities?
Sure. So Birch Tree is a nonprofit organization who provides behavioral health and mental health services to some of the most severely ill people in Arkansas. Birch Tree was founded in 1989. It was started during a period when a lot of the state facilities, they were deinstitutionalizing a lot of these facilities that housed those with most severe mental illness. Our founder, who was a social advocate for these underserved group of people, he started the organization with a $4,000 donation, a transport van, and 39 members. Birch Tree has since grown from our original 39 members to roughly 400 with 11 locations throughout central and north central Arkansas. What we call a member is basically our patients, our mentally ill patients. We call them members because our services are not open to the general public. You have to be referred from a psychiatrist to come to Birch Tree. We treat schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and schizoaffective disorders. We provide rehabilitative day treatment, group and individual therapy, medication management, and then group and transitional housing. Our main objective is to take those that are the most severe ill, work with them through therapies and medications so that they transition from a 24-hour, 7 days a week monitoring and to be more independent, where we're helping them, less often to a complete independent individual within the community where they live and where their families are. So it's really a transitional process. Our goal is to take someone with severe mental illness and bring them to a point to where they're back into the community as we are with families and with their families and friends. We have an expressive arts program where we integrate arts art into their therapies, which provides them confidence, and it helps them helps develop their communication. And our largest fundraiser is actually an art show where we take this artwork, which is surprisingly, I mean, these pieces that they put together would match anything that you would see in any other artist collection. I mean, it's beautiful pieces, really well done. And we sell these at auction, and we actually give the proceeds back to the members, to spend as they wish. And so that's one of our biggest fundraisers. We're currently expanding. We've been fortunate enough to have the ability to expand our footprint. We're opening a new 16-bed facility in Greenbrier. And we continue to look, for solutions to extend, our services and provide treatments for those in the communities we serve and potential, other communities in Arkansas. So that's a little bit about what Birch Tree is and what we do.
Yeah, amazing, Blake. Thank you so much for sharing that. And wow, it's amazing to hear the journey of Birch Trees as an organization, and also the impact that you all have been having and continue to have and will have into the future on your members that you're helping to serve and support. So very, very cool story. And I know the art show is something that NetGain has actually been a part of, and we've tried to help support over the course of our relationship together. Tell us a little bit about your role at Birch Tree, Blake.
So, essentially, I've got two main functions. One is the finance, team, and then that involves budgeting, that involves financial reporting, that involves forecasting throughout the year. That entails presenting, financial information to the board, working with our auditors to complete our annual audit, working on the IRS Form 990. So that's one piece of it. The other piece that falls within my purview is IT. And that's really anything IT really comes through me. And I'm truly the only person at Birch Tree that manages the IT from Birch's side. One of the things that we've started recently in the last 6 months is develop this IT committee that meets once a quarter. And this committee is made up of other directors and other executives, and then also directors of each of the departments, the main departments within our organization, to help, provide feedback, to help develop our IT strategies, because IT impacts the whole organization, right? It's not just, finance that is, that changes in IT affects, everybody uses IT. And so it was important for us to give everybody a voice. And so that's what this IT steering committee is that we've put together. So I've got some viewpoints and some feedback from other groups in our department or in our organization. But from the day to day, that's me managing, IT, help desk, escalations, projects, security, strategy. So, and that's a big part of my responsibility. IT takes up probably 40% of my time, when I'm not working on the numbers.
On the numbers, yeah. My goodness, Blake, you definitely wear several hats within Birch Tree, and I know that's something that we encounter a lot with the organizations and companies that we work with. Is typically our main point of contact isn't like an IT director or CTO, chief technology officer or something. It's somebody who's in charge of finances, or it's the general manager who also happens to have to manage the IT infrastructure and whatnot. So yeah, that's a lot to undertake, and it's a great reason to partner with companies like NetGain. So, and that kind of gives me a warm introduction into our next segment. And we're going to delve a little bit into some of the IT challenges that you all have encountered over the past couple of years. I understand the partnership between Birch Tree and NetGain began actually a couple of years ago, and it started with some professional services support around a key IT project that would impact Birch Tree's operations ability to expand their reach of support, like telehealth, if you will. And Carl headlined this project for NetGain, so he can attest to how this whole partnership got started and what that project entailed, and as well as the outcomes. So Carl, I'm going to toss this over to you. Can you tell us how this partnership first came to be with Birch Tree?
I would be happy to. When Birch Tree came to NetGain, they were in a situation where they really, simply put, just wanted to know where they were. They knew where they were from a technology standpoint, but they also, shared with me multiple challenges. They were, as he mentioned, they were very dependent on using video conferencing technology to conduct business, and as part of what they do. They are very dependent on their locations to have stable and reliable internet connections. They are very dependent upon their applications that they use to help run their business. So our initial prescription was to provide an assessment which will detail and make recommendations, or we'll call it a technology plan for the next 3 years, and help prioritize those projects and especially in the order that they needed to occur, so we could get from where where they were today to get to where they wanted to be, which is to help them manage their business without Blake having to increase that 40% of his time that he was spending. In general, that's how it sort of all unfolded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, was there a key pain point? Typically, we find that when people come knocking at their door, there's typically a pain point or a major issue or challenge that needs quick resolution, or maybe they're even not happy with their current IT provider. I don't think that was the case with
Yes.
Birch Tree, because I don't think they were partnered with anybody. But
frankly, there were some major challenges. Like a lot of organizations, IT personnel typically have a specific skill set, and it's really difficult to have a generalist that's able to do everything that one company may need, because they don't get to do that very often, or a particular project. So it's hard for them to be an expert for a particular type of solution, because they don't get to do it very often. But certainly the challenges were to untangle the network as it was designed originally. The big problem that we encountered was, as we were wading through we'd already delivered an assessment. We were kind of looking at prioritizing projects. Birch Tree had an experience with ransomware, which took down their whole network, which certainly expedited all the measures that we needed to put in place. So we immediately hit the ground running, and in terms of prioritizing the projects, which were, number one was removing ransomware and getting through that. But certainly that accelerated the need for the various IT infrastructure projects that we put into place.
Yeah, implementing changes. And yeah, this is nothing new to small businesses, large alike. I know that that's typically one of the more recent issues that companies have been coming to us more frequently for is cybersecurity issues. So was this And I know that's something that you guys have been currently working on project-wise in terms of ramping up the security posture, but I'll wait to bring that up until later in terms of the forward look into future projects. But you mentioned networking challenges and finding a solution to that. Could you delve into that a little bit more for us?
Sure. We wanted to build out their infrastructure, again, knowing what their business is and what their priorities are. You know, their network was very dependent on this communication amongst their branches to include video. So we had to put into place various switching infrastructure, as well as leveraging an SD-WAN technology, which help the reliability of these network connections and helped with orchestration on being able to manage the bandwidth that we had available. Anyone that is conducting business in Arkansas, you know that when you get out into the rural communities, bandwidth can be challenged. Working with various ISPs, because you know certain companies are not everywhere, so you have to go use, most cases, multiple companies, and having the ability to manage your network was important, because in the past you had to 100% depend on your ISP to do that, and that they are not always super responsive. They only allow you to do certain things, and certainly we have the skill sets here at NetGain to be able to do everything that we needed to do. We just needed the keys. So yes, it was very much laying the groundwork from a networking infrastructure side of things to include, you know, SD-WAN technologies as well as switching infrastructure to be able to handle this video conferencing technology that needed to be upgraded.
Sorry, my audio. Thank you for that, Carl. Can you tell us what SD-WAN stands for?
SD-WAN is software defined wide area network, and that's kind of a fancy term for being able to, again, have software controls over the orchestration of the network.
Thank you for that, Carl. Appreciate it. We were talking about this right before we hopped into the webinar. Acronyms are definitely a fun aspect of the IT world, and it's always helpful to have some definitions you can tie to them to help people better understand some of the lingo, if you will.
Sure.
And
so it's hard to also always think, like, what does it really do? You know, what is it? It's we hear all these fancy marketing terms and, you know, that sort of stuff, but it really, at the end of the day, what is it going to do for my business? And you know, as compared to what we're doing today, and is there a cost benefit for doing so? So in this particular instance, there was a significant cost savings by reviewing current ISP contracts, and, you know, again, putting this solution in place was it was a money savings thing for Birch Tree, a significant money savings thing, but it also helped check off one of their challenges that they had on their list that we had started the network assessment.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the term network should be familiar to everybody on the webinar today. Something very important has become even more critical to businesses being able to operate over the past couple of years with dispersed workforces, shifting work environments in terms of remote, hybrid, in-person workplaces, being able to have a solid network for people to connect with one another, share information, back up their data, all of that. It's been definitely been trending. Cloud, I'll toss that term out too, cloud networking, all of that. So anyway, I digress. And I'm going to move us right along into our next topic, which is partnering with an MSP, which we've definitely touched on multiple times. So as with any kind of relationship, personal or professional, there can be opportunities and challenges faced and overcome together with communication and collaboration. And I'd like to pose a question to both sides of the table now. What are some of the opportunities and challenges with partnering with an MSP? And Blake, I'm going to give the floor to you first.
Sure. Opportunities with NetGain and MSP, expertise. NetGain is not only managing our operations, they're also managing the operations of other clients of theirs. So they see a lot. They see a lot more than if we were to have our in-house IT staff. They provide comprehensive solutions. From boots on the ground to eyes on the sky. They provide solutions from A to Z, and that gives us a peace of mind knowing that the expertise, along with a comprehensive solution, and always available. Whereas with IT staff, they might be available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or whatever, but not with the MSP and not with NetGain. So those are some opportunities that I see with the MSP. Challenges we faced. Carl touched on this earlier about the ransomware attack. Ransomware and hacking attacks are becoming more and more numerous. Just recently, Little Rock School District was attacked with a ransomware situation where they had student accounts, student social security numbers, all that personal data from students from the largest school district in the state, and they had to pay a ransom fee. And to my knowledge, they did not have the right software security in place. And so, protecting our members, our patient information, protecting our staff's personal information, that's a priority for us, and specifically for me. So we're doing what we can in that realm. Hacking is a challenge. The COVID environmental factors like COVID was challenging for us because we still had to provide services, to these folks who need treatment, whether there's a pandemic or not. And so through the telehealth and the technology to be able to connect our psychiatrists and our staff to members in a way that we were limiting the amount of interaction, person to person interaction. So that was a challenge that presented itself. And then education, educating our staff on what to do, what not to do when it comes to, clicking on a malicious link or being mindful of malicious, softwares and emails and so on and so forth. So those are a few challenges, along with, some staff, they see me as the IT guy. And so that, they'll stop by my office and say, I've got a problem, here's my problem. Just getting them accustomed to, calling or emailing the help desk is something that I'm still focused on, but we'll get there.
Work in progress, aren't we all, though? Now, Carl, you work closely with Birch Tree and a number of other companies as their account executive. What can you share about being on the supporting side of the table and working with SMBs and their IT teams and their technologies?
Well, when you enter into these contracts, it's really important to know sort of the culture of the company and, being familiar with the technology that they have, because, I know what the costs are for our services. So I have to be able to, with a good mind, to be able to make a recommendation on what if I were in your shoes, Blake, this is how I would engage NetGain. So what does that mean? Do I need to keep my current IT staff, or do I need IT staff, or what can I strategically redeploy people that are on my IT team? What is it that they are good at specifically? In Birch Tree's instance, they really didn't have any proprietary software that any current IT staff was like the owner of, so to speak. Everything that they needed from an IT perspective, we were able to handle. And we certainly do all their projects, but day to day, we are their security team and we are their help desk team, and we help manage all the infrastructure that's behind the scenes, which is critical to to the overall security posture too. Every business out there today they're having security audits, they have cyber insurance questionnaires, they have customers that may require all these things. And as an MSP, we have to evolve to be able to handle all of those things, because we are your one-stop shop, so to speak. And as Blake mentioned, it's the culture within a company to be able to go, hey Blake, my computer's got a blue screen, can you come help me? And that's not the way that things need to work or can work, because you can pick up the phone and call our help desk and you get the person that is going to help you. And once those people have at least one good experience, then they probably won't come knock on Blake's door anymore. And that's the way that things have had to work. So it's important that we keep good people, we keep our people trained, certainly, but also being available really is, and helping his user population have confidence in not only what Birch Tree, their infrastructure, but as well as the help that we are able to provide.
Thank you, Carl, for that. I'd like to wrap our discussion a little bit with a look into how Birch Tree is keeping their technology healthy today. So what are some of the latest IT shifts or changes that have been going on for the company, maybe focused on this year, 2022? So Blake, I'll hand this to you first.
Okay. As I said before, with our organization, security is always top of mind. So we just within this year we've started a security operating center as a service. They monitor our network all 24/7, looking for oddities, things that look suspicious, using artificial intelligence, and then narrowing it down to the most significant looking situations that are then handed to a technician, and then if a technician is determined that this particular situation needs to be dealt with, we'll provide that to NetGain. They'll go in, since they know our network, they'll go in, they'll remove whatever was identified as problematic. So we implemented that this year. We've also done a multi-factor, along with the security lines. We're doing multi-factor authentication for staff who are logging in remotely to work, from home or whatever. It's a service that we hadn't utilized before, but it's to add another layer of security. Also, something that our insurance carrier, for our cyber policy, is now requiring. As Carl mentioned before, when they first came on board, they basically installed new network equipment, revamped some of our network pieces, and some of that equipment is becoming of age. It's aging out. The 3 to 5 years is about the age
end
limit.
of life.
End of life. Thank you. End of life of some of this equipment. And so we're having to look to refresh a lot of the areas of our network, and as a part of that, we're trying to create some redundancy so that if we do have a malfunction in equipment, that we have a backup so that we don't have a work stoppage. So security, continued security implementation, network refresh, and redundancy.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Blake. Yeah. So MFA is multi-factor authentication, and that's can also, this is like, I feel like I'm giving a quick lesson. also takes on some different names or terms too. It could also be dual factor authentication, two-factor authentication, 2FA. And as Blake also mentioned, that being a requirement for their cyber insurance policy, that's been a requirement to even qualify for cyber insurance, I've heard. So that's definitely been a trend that we've seen with a lot of companies more so recently, and hopefully everybody is practicing this in their business and their personal life too. I know I've got it across the board and all of the applications and subscriptions I'm a part of. It's a pain in the butt having to put in all these different passwords and whatnot, but in order to sleep a little bit more soundly at night, it is time and effort well spent. So, Carl, I'll give the floor to you. Now, is there anything about these upcoming projects for Birch Tree that you want to touch on?
Well, just in terms of, to add on to what Blake's talking about, in terms of Birch Tree keeping their technology healthy, a critical piece of that also are the quarterly reporting that we do. We have a tool that we use that basically, in a nutshell, grades their current infrastructure as well as how they operate from a security standpoint. So being able to, and these are not like NetGain standards. Having that secondary tool to be able to evaluate, how Birch Tree stands in terms of the business standards for IT it helps direct our resources in terms of what we need to address. And this is quarterly. So it's, technology evolves quickly. So you have to do it that often, whether that's, just looking at IT stuff or if it's security stuff, because it's all sort of under one umbrella now. But as far as the evolution of how we are helping Birch Tree, from a project perspective, we certainly are well connected there. I like to think of my clients as family. So we have to meet pretty regularly, not just on Thanksgiving. And we certainly have meetings regularly to be able to discuss where things are. And as I mentioned, all technology solutions, there has to be a need and an alignment and a cost justification. And those are things that we always want to look at. We certainly also want to make sure that we are measuring up to the satisfaction that they need as well as their technology.
Yeah, thank you for that, Carl. I'm gonna use this pause as a bit of a transition for us. I'm gonna send out a quick poll to everybody, and I'm gonna use this time to give us all a little bit of a talking break, and I'm going to look through some of our questions that we've had come in through the chat too. So distributing the poll, I'll give everybody a few minutes, not a few, maybe a couple minutes to respond to that. And we've had a couple questions come in, so I'll get those sorted out. A couple more seconds. Okay, awesome. Thank you all for that. And now let's hop into some questions. So here is one that we had come in. Looking to update some hardware, but the cost and availability is a challenge. Any tips? My goodness, I think this has been a challenge for quite a number of people. So great question for this. Let's see, Carl, I'll toss this to you first.
Certainly, hardware availability is an issue. We don't work exclusively with one manufacturer. We do have our lead technology solutions, so it's important to work with an engineering team to, again, understand what it is you're trying to accomplish, without just thinking, hey, I need a new TV. Well, maybe you don't need any TV. Let's look at everything and let's evaluate what it is that you're looking to do. Some of these hardware availability issues are hard to overcome. So we look at other ways that we can maybe do what we need to do. But in some cases, we do have to wait. And so we try to make sure that we are in a stable environment, stable working environment. If there is some sort of workaround that we can do, these are unprecedented times. Specifically with switching and access points and things like that. Servers and storage and things like that have cleared up and starting to clear up. Laptops, desktops. The challenges seem to be primarily in the switching, firewall, APs, that kind of stuff. But certainly, if there are questions that you have, we can tackle those on a case-by-case basis. But in general, helping work with a company or an individual that is in the know, an expert, so to speak, that works with a lot of other clients is helpful. It's even helpful for me to be able to go to my team because of the depth and breadth of that we have on our bench. As I mentioned earlier, it's hard to find an individual that may be good at everything. So you have experts in certain verticals. So that's the way I handle things. Go ask the smart guys.
Yeah. We've got a few smart people at NetGain, I would say, and it's actually a bit of a history lesson about NetGain. The company started out as a VAR, a value-added reseller, and so our strengths were actually in like hardware and hardware sales. So we've shifted a bit from that in more recent years, but we've kept a lot of those ties with the companies that we first started with. So very cool there. In my opinion, I think it's cool. And one thing I also wanted to touch on, Carl, you talked about trying to plan in advance, and I think that's why these IT roadmaps can be so important for planning longer term. Blake, as you brought up, you've got some hardware that is going to be coming end of life. So it's, granted, end of life might be in 2024 or even, towards the end of 2023, but, based on availability of materials and hardware, you might need to start planning today to purchase and budget for, these new solutions in order to actually get them in hand before your IT is end of life and you can't get support on it. It'll still be working, but say something goes a little schizo on the software side of like one of your switches, it's end of life. I mean, you're kind of on your own with that stuff, and that's not a good place to be. So anyway, I digress. One more question I'm going to toss out here. How is your company measuring success with IT changes? And Blake, I'm going to toss this to you. How is Birch Tree measuring success with some of these projects on like networking changes that you've implemented? How are you measuring success with those?
If it's quiet, I'm not hearing anything from any of our sites about how they're not able to do X, Y, or Z because of a computer issue or a serious server being down, or I feel like that's success. If we're able to maintain a secure posture on our network, and we're identifying risks and mitigating that, and we're not seeing any malicious activity, or we're not caught, I don't know if caught's the right word, but if we're not under the thumb of a malicious hacker, then I find that successful. So just no news is good news, I guess. No issues arising, that I find that to be successful. And yes, we're going through a network refresh, and I'm relying on Carl to help provide some creative solutions so that we are effectively upgrading our network at the same time as making it reasonably affordable. And Carl has always been good about He's always had, Birch Tree top of mind, especially from a financial perspective, and he's always coming up with great ideas that help the organization save money, and I say that's a win too. So
most definitely. Carl, is there anything you'd like to add to that for measuring success with like IT projects, maybe?
Just as far as like quantifying a success measurement, number one, we do provide a what we call a QBR, which again evaluates industry standards and compares those with what Birch Tree currently has in place, so they get a score that is a number as compared to industry standards. We also provide security assessment, and I believe that's annual. So that also uses the NIST standards to be able to provide them a quantitative score as it relates to security standards. We also have a very quick and easy survey that any ticket that's created from a user, they can just tell us thumbs up or thumbs down and make comments. So we get a security, we get a weekly, actually, we meet with Blake and review previous week's tickets, and it's paramount for us to understand that we are, making happy clients out there. So those are, and that score is a cumulative score over the amount of tickets that were created in the previous period. So those are three things that come to mind that are actual quantitative success measurements.
Appreciate that, Carl. I think I liked Blake's answer of like no news is good news. If it's quiet, it means things are probably going pretty well.
That is an easy, I mean, that's the right answer. But, like if they dive down into the
gotta put some numbers behind it.
CFO types, they want a number. So we do have the numbers also, but I like Blake actually answered the way I was going to answer it. So I answered the way that we were just helping each other out here.
Appreciate that, Carl. Yeah. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our webinar a little bit early, give everybody a little bit more time left in their day. But huge thank you to Blake and Carl for all the insights and experience they've shared today around Birch Tree Communities and technology, and even how our two companies have worked together and have had pretty solid relationship thus far. Hopefully everyone found this webinar informative and helpful, and you can walk away with some different perspectives maybe on how your organization is leveraging technology, and even some ways you might be able to do things differently or a little more efficiently to elevate your business. So with that, I will close out the webinar, and if anybody has any additional questions after the fact, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be in touch. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline.